Hello, very warm welcome to everyone. My name is Olga Viligurska. I'm the director of CEEMAN Management Development Association, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to our Know-How webinar on content marketing today. GMAC Media Solutions is part of the Graduate Management Admissions Council, our longtime corporate member, and it specializes in helping schools connect with prospective students through content and digital marketing. We are glad to have Andy Roughton, Managing Director of GMAC Media Solutions, and editor Marco de Novelis with us today to offer you some practical information on how to use content marketing to keep your candidates engaged while we navigate through the COVID-19 crisis. I would like to let you know that the webinar will be recorded so that we can share the recording with you afterwards for further reference. And without further ado, I invite Andy and Marco to take the floor. Enjoy.
Thanks very much for the introduction, and of course, thanks for the invitation to speak with everybody today. Welcome everyone, thank you for joining. Appreciate it's a difficult time for everybody, so let's start by saying we hope everybody is keeping well. As we just heard, we're going to spend the next sort of 45 minutes or so talking about how to create a winning content marketing strategy. And I think it's fair to say in an increasingly competitive market, we think content marketing is an essential way to help you develop your brand and promote your schools to candidates in an engaging, authentic and effective way. There's going to be a couple of polls today through the course of the session. The first one we're going to set running any moment now, and then there'll be another one at the end. We could ask you just to take a moment at some point to just answer the only one question. If you could take a moment just to answer those, that would be greatly appreciated. I just wanted to build on those introductions a little bit. As you heard, I'm Andy Roughton. I'm the Managing Director of both Business Because, which is an online publisher focused on graduate management education with an audience of prospective candidates, as well as Managing Director of GMAC Media Solutions, as you heard. I've got around 20 years experience in both publishing and working in marketing agencies, specializing in content marketing, and providing some of those sorts of services to some of the world's biggest brands. I'm joined by Marco. He's the editor at Business Because. His team works directly with a number of business schools around the globe on creating compelling content marketing. In this webinar, we're going to spend around 30 minutes taking you through a 5-step guide to creating a winning content marketing strategy with some insider tips on SEO and social media. And then for the remainder of the session, we're interested in hearing from you. So you'll be able to share your marketing challenges, ask any questions you may have, and to ask your questions, please use the Q&A function, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. So I've just seen I've got a raised hand. So let me just check what's happened there. Oh yeah, we're starting the first poll now. Sorry, that was a message for me rather than from one of you as the attendees. So let me just clear that out of the way for myself. So yes, to ask you questions, then please do use the Q&A function, which you should see somewhere at the bottom of your screen. You can start asking your questions at any point. We'll pick them as we get towards the end to wrap them up. The chat mode is open. You're more than happy for everybody to chat amongst yourselves, but we're not going to be monitoring that ourselves. So if you've got any questions, please do use the Q&A function. When you do ask a question, if you can include a little bit about yourself, maybe your school, maybe your marketing challenges, that'll just help us set a bit of context for how we best respond to you. If there's only a few questions, then if you want to ask something specific, if you do raise your hand, then we can look at unmuting you and allowing you to ask the question if that's going to be an easier thing to do. So I'll hand over to Marco.
Yes, thank you, Andy, and hello, everyone. So getting straight into it and a quick recap before we start. What is content marketing? So I'm sure it's a phrase you've all heard before, but it's worth looking again at the definition here. And I think the key words here are valuable, relevant, and consistent in the definition. So value separates content marketing out from other forms of advertising. This is not a billboard at a train station. Your audience should be naturally interested in your story. You should offer them value. The content should be relevant to that target audience, and the content should be consistent. So the same themes should be promoted throughout different pieces of content and across different channels, and these themes should tie a content campaign together. So make sure you keep this definition of content marketing and the 3 key words in your mind when creating your content campaign. On this slide, how can content marketing help you as business schools? Well, very simply, if you share positive, effective content online, people are more likely to become interested in your business school than if you don't. It's quite straightforward. But here's some interesting stats from the Content Marketing Institute. Firstly, almost half the key age demographic for graduate business school programs across sort of masters, MBA, get their news and information online. So it's your key audience. Content marketing is also more successful than outbound marketing, basically adverts in generating leads. And content marketing can also be more effective than paid search. So the cost up front for creating a piece of content is typically lower, and the benefits lasts longer. So with paid search, you might need to keep putting money into Google AdWords to get results, to get your school ranked high or your page ranked high on Google. With content marketing, content stays online, it gets shared and reshared, and it builds its own momentum over time. And the more content you create, the more search indexable pages you end up with, pages on the internet that link back to your site, and that content leads to traffic, which eventually leads to leads. Now, one thing we would not mention today is the coronavirus situation. I'm sure it's affecting all of you in your respective business schools, and it's affecting us as well. We're all doing this from home. And it's also affecting business school candidates globally. Something you may have heard me talk about before is the importance of content marketing when it comes to overcoming challenges around context. So that could be overcoming issues with the political environment in your country, or if your country suffers a natural disaster. These external issues that you don't have control over do impact candidates' perceptions they have of your school. However, whatever those challenges are, you can overcome them if you have a strong enough brand which can help your school stand out to those prospective students, whatever the external challenges. So the key thing here is do not underestimate your brand. For example, if Harvard was badly affected specifically by coronavirus, people would still want to go to Harvard because of that brand name. Even though coronavirus has hit Italy very hard, Milan in particular, when I think of SDA Bocconi, the business school in Milan, I still think first of its strength in finance and fashion, for example. So that strong brand shines out, and content marketing is what allows you to define and promote your brand so you can overcome these challenges, these external challenges like coronavirus, and instead have prospective students associate your brand with the key themes you want to promote. So that might be a strength in a certain area like finance or entrepreneurship, or even a feeling like positivity or openness. So especially in the current climate, content marketing can really help you. But content marketing can only help you connect with the prospective students if it's done effectively. And to do so, we've suggested these 5 steps, which we're going to go through now. And we'll also talk through some case studies and examples for each of these steps from business schools. And again, remember, you can ask questions at any time on any of these steps using the Q&A function, and we will come back to them at the end. So the first step, establish your goals. this is quite a straightforward one. You need to know what your goals are, what you're creating content for before you create the content. Is it about building awareness for your brand, or generating applications to a business school program, or both? What do you want to achieve with the content? Then ask yourself, who are you trying to reach? What themes do you want to push? Where will the content sit? So asking yourself this why, who, what, where before you launch a content marketing campaign will help you establish your clear goals. And these questions, how you answer them, should dictate the type of content you create and what your call to action is for each content piece. So essentially, what do you want your audience to do next after someone has read the piece of content? That's crucial, whether that's ask for more information about your school, register for a webinar, for example, or download a brochure. You should also think about your goals for each piece of content within a campaign. So here we've got some useful content buckets. So think about your goals in terms of how each piece of content will serve and create value for your audience. With these pieces of content, these sort of content buckets that we've got here, your content can fit into one of these. It's quite helpful to use. So from left to right, will your piece of content be a career success story, for example, of an alum who transitioned to work in his dream job? So sort of entertain and inspire me piece. That's the goal of the piece, to entertain and inspire your audience. Will it be a quick guide to visa applications? Help me. Will it help candidates choose between a master's program or an MBA program? Will it be a piece of content that keeps the reader returning for more with a follow-up piece? Now, we've got an example here, a school you all know with, and we've chosen this on purpose, a school you're all familiar with, sorry. And here's an example of a school with very strong goals who we worked with at Business Because to promote their MBA program. Now, Stanford is very strongly associated with entrepreneurship, Silicon Valley. But working with us, they wanted to get away from that and to showcase their other strengths, to reach out to new students from less traditional backgrounds for MBAs, and to make use of their own alumni community, to showcase that doing a Stanford MBA is more than just about entrepreneurship. So having these clear goals of what they wanted to achieve meant and made for a very focused campaign. You can see the result is content which introduces other themes and really shows the variety of career options for students from that school. Now on to step 2, and this has a lot of overlap with step 1. And that's because your goals should be absolutely tied to the wants and needs of your target audience. And we had a lot of crossover just going through step 1 in itself. Because your audience are your potential customers, knowing who your audience is, what they're interested in, and what stage of the application process they are at is crucial when it comes to building a successful content marketing strategy. Now there's a lot to consider: ages, geographies, whether people are using mobile or desktop, what time of day they're looking at the content. In the current climate with coronavirus, think also about how your audience's priorities and interests and behaviors are changing. There's been a shift back towards using desktop. People are on the internet at different times, more time perhaps than they would be in the normal working days. So consider how people's priorities are changing. And more specific to graduate management education, think about the application funnel when you're creating new content. There's a long journey to business school. People don't just click and buy a business school degree. And this funnel here is actually a very simple funnel. So you can use this just to start and consider, are the people you're targeting right at the beginning of their journey? Are they lower down the funnel, coming to the decision process? Can you engage with candidates at every stage of the funnel?
But of course, we all know that buyer behavior is rarely a straight line descent through any sort of purchase funnel. This is a Forrester map showing B2B buyer behavior. And this starts to feel a little bit more like what candidates go through in making the decisions that ultimately could shape the rest of their career. Is the key point here being that there's so many stages, double backs, intersections. It's critical to be present when your target audience are asking their questions. It's what Google call the zero moment of truth. And someone else once said 80% of success is showing up. So content marketing provides the opportunity to do just that, to be there at the point where somebody's asking that specific question, so that you're the one providing the answer, the solution, the information, or the inspiration. What you've got here, and I appreciate this is super small, but at GMAC we did a significant amount of research into mapping the journey of early career professionals, and as you can see on this diagram, it's an incredibly complex picture. So thinking about your audience and what stage of the journey they might be at can be incredibly useful when you're planning your content strategy.
Yeah, and also what you can do to understand your audience is to build audience profiles. And again, GMAC has helpfully done this already for you. GMAC categorizes prospective students into 7 categories, which you can see here. So from respect seekers, top left, these are people who care a lot about ranking and reputation when it comes to choosing a school, to global strivers, people who want to work internationally, and impactful innovators. So these are socially minded entrepreneurs. And depending on what type of candidate you're targeting, you'll want to focus your content on different things. And a great example of this, and a school that really understood their target audience, is St. Gallen in Switzerland, and specifically their SIM Master in Management program. So we worked with St. Gallen, and their MIM program is ranked #1 in the world by the Financial Times. And so this program naturally attracts a lot of what GMAC call respect seekers, these people who care about ranking. But St. Gallen wanted to use content marketing to move away from that and attract a more diverse candidate pool and more global strivers and impactful innovators. So they focused their campaign on not just saying we're ranked #1, but showcasing the reasons behind the ranking, communicating their emphasis on value-driven leadership, the study experience, and the long-lasting value of the SIM degree. And so SIM is an example of how their key campaign goal was driven by an understanding of their target audience. So that idea of the goals and the audience being intertwined. And we also know another example just of that we worked with Singapore Management University, for example. They have mapped their intake against those GMAC audience segments that we had on the previous slide. So they can work out what kind of candidate is most attractive to the different types of programs, and then apply that to their outbound marketing activity. So you've done steps 1 and 2. You've established your goals, you understand your target audience. Step 3 is to plan what you're going to do with the content once it's created, and whether that's sort of putting it on social media or in a newsletter or where it's sitting on your website. And that needs to be planned and in your mind before you create the content. So interestingly, email is still a top choice for candidates where they prefer to hear from business schools. In a GMAC survey, 92% of candidates said email is where they'd most like to receive information from schools interested in their profiles. But social media is obviously very important. The Association of Graduate Admission Consultants, AGAC, surveyed MBA applicants last year and asked them which social media websites they go to find information on business schools. And they concluded that LinkedIn is the most popular social media channel among MBA candidates, followed by YouTube, so the increasing importance of video content, and Facebook. And they also found that Quora, the question and answer platform, is more popular than Twitter for MBA applicants. Now, this is majority US and MBA, again, candidates, but it's worth keeping this in mind. Look at the social media platforms that are relevant for your target audience, whether that's domestic or looking internationally. If you want to attract US or European candidates, this is very relevant. And think about what kind of content suits those channels. Facebook is hugely important in many countries in the world, and it still has relevance. You still need to post there. But do think about looking beyond Facebook. So as we've said, on LinkedIn, it has that ideal business and career focused audience. On sites like Reddit, for example, has more active users than Twitter. And think about the audience, that is 70% male. On Pinterest, which is popular in Western Europe, where 80% of users are female, and Instagram, where almost 90% of users are under 35. The key thing here, think about your target market in particular. But if you are looking at maybe international recruitment and looking towards the West, what we've done for you is put together some quick posting checklists to think about when you're sharing content. So you'll get a copy of this presentation sent by email after this webinar. You'll be able to access it on the relevant website. You'll have all the slides. So we won't go into too much detail on these, but it's important to note just on Facebook, and something you may be aware of is that you need to really pay to get your content seen there. It's estimated that no more than 5.5% of your Facebook following see your organic content. So you have to put a little bit of money behind it, a post, to extend its reach and get some traction. And that can be as little as $25. But especially where a post is already performing well organically, it's worth boosting it to extend your reach. And again, with these checklists, which we can skip through now, remember every platform is different and needs a different kind of approach and different kind of content. And just to conclude this section, we've got some examples from schools who've developed content which is especially well suited for the different social channel. And I can see we've got a few participants' hands raised. If you have questions and you can quickly type them in on the Q&A function, please do use that and we'll come to you at the end. Otherwise, we will let you speak at the end. Just going through these examples, we can see Johns Hopkins have done a student takeover on Instagram on the left. So that personal video content aimed at the younger audience on Instagram. London Business School have done a hashtag campaign, Why I Love LBS. So that's also on Instagram and works well on Twitter. Again, using your existing assets, using your students and alumni, make sure you use these people and engage with these communities from the moment they enter the school. And CEEBS in China, also great results with a Facebook campus tour video led by their student ambassadors. Now, step 4 is a little bit more technical, and this is much more focused on attracting an audience to your website directly, so rather than on or through social media. So if you want to attract traffic to the content on your website over time, you'll need to do some search engine optimization, SEO. And this means ensuring your content is worded and structured in a way that helps it appear in internet search results, so on Google. Before you decide what to include in your content campaign, do some keyword research to find out what people are actually searching for when they search for online MBA, for example. You'll need to assess the competition. Are there other sites already performing well for that search term? Then make sure you optimize the content you've created. So check it includes the target keywords in the right places. That's the title, the meta description, and the body of the text. And helpfully, you can use various tools to do this. So the videos you've seen on the screen here is Moz, M-O-Z. But there are lots of different tools that you can use to research keywords and then optimize your content. Now, there are many other factors that play a part in SEO. So site speed, being mobile optimized, and links back to your site are very important. It's not an exact science, and it can be tricky, but it's worth investing time in, because ultimately performing well in organic search results can help your content go further for free. When it comes to creating content for SEO purposes, you need to think about what things people are searching for and what things will last and be relevant a year or two down the line. So we've picked out some good and bad examples. Here's some good examples of SEO ready, evergreen content that's always going to be useful. How to apply for a visa, reasons to do an MBA. We've got a guide to life in Baltimore, for example, bottom right. Bottom left is interesting. It's a business conditions report by a Chinese school. And it's basically a study by a professor at the school of the Chinese economic outlook based on a monthly survey of business school alumni who own companies. So it's great research content that journalists can reference and link back to, and then help build the website's domain authority and search rank. And it's updated regularly, it's evergreen. Here's some not so good examples. So these aren't necessarily bad content pieces, just to stress that. There's great pieces here by Business Because, for example, but also INSEAD and good publications. But these are not great in terms of search engine optimization. So the HBS Dean story, the Trump versus Clinton, the 2016 story, these are obviously time sensitive. They don't have long-term value. And Google, for example, hates old, outdated content. So you might want to repurpose this content, use it in a different way, reframe it. And the Turn the Office into a Lab feature, this is from INSEAD's blog. It's quite a recent piece, but there's no searchable terms in that headline. No one's really typing in those words. So you would have to do a bit of keyword research and change the headline to get picked up by a larger audience. So it might be something about the future of work, the office of the future. Look at the words people are searching for.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that point, these pieces aren't necessarily bad pieces of content. They're interesting, but they might be time sensitive. So going back to that that earlier point around, what are you trying to achieve with this particular piece of content? If it's something timely, if it is something that is related to something that's trending at that point, or is a particularly hot topic, then just be aware that you're not doing it for long-term search tail reasons, that it's about creating noise and creating awareness in the short term. So it's just getting the balance right, and you need a little from column A and a little from column B. I'm going to pause here just before we go on to the final step, step 5. We've got a couple of hands raised. I don't know if it's questions or technical issues. I can see Nino and Yanil. So if I'm just going to allow you to talk for a moment and just see it, because I don't know if there's a specific question or if there's a technical issue. So we'll just pause for a second to allow that. Nino, I'm going to come to you first of all.
Just got to check on mute there, Andy.
Yeah, they should be able to talk now, unless Nino, you might be muted on your side. I think you need to unmute both sides. Okay, doesn't look like Nino is there. Maybe there's a technical issue there. So I'm going to come to Yanil just to check if there's an issue on your side now. You'll have to take yourself off of mute.
I think potentially everyone may be muted, so we can go on, and if you do have questions, do use the Q&A where I can see people are asking some questions, and I don't know, do you want to do them now, Andy, or come
No,
to
that's
the
fine.
end?
We'll carry on, and then we'll come back to the questions at the end. Just wanted to check on those two who had raised hands there. The last thing, step 5, is of course understanding what is success. What does good look like? And I'm afraid, as probably the picture gives away, there's no holy grail answer here. Measuring the success of content marketing is multi-layered. There's a range of different measurables, there's different sources of analytics, and of course there's context to apply to each piece of activity or campaign. However, there are some steps you can take to assess things and then delve deeper as and when required. So a lot of content marketing, particularly if it's around brand building or brand awareness, can be longer term in focus and have a long tail objective. It's very easy to get drawn into vanity metrics like sort of social follows or those sorts of things. So the best approach is to think back to your original goals and what your success criteria was before you started. And we talked about that at the beginning. What are we looking for people to do as a result of reading? And then think about what the appropriate time frame is for measuring that performance. So brand uplift is a pretty soft measure, so it can be tricky to quantify. Before and after brand awareness surveys are one way, but I appreciate that can be quite expensive and onerous things to undertake. Even more so would be a regular cadence brand tracker, and which allows you to see sort of uplift on things. The quicker fix areas to look at this are maybe to look at applicant surveys and look at asking your applicants about the different touch points that they have interfaced with before they get to the point of applying. Remember, it's unlikely that the content's going to be the only touch point. As we said before, being present when a prospect is looking is key, and they might not always recognize the influence that one piece of content that they read 6 months ago that resonated with them just left a mental trigger that when they came to applying they were reminded of. So here's a few different things you can look at depending on your goals. So you look at number of reads, the time spent on the page, social impressions, actions taken, and by actions taken it might be data capture form completed, it might be clicks, it might be bounces. Remember that where actions are being used to track performance, you might need something that prompts that action around your piece of content. People are far more likely to click on to fill in a form or go to another article if you're giving them a clear call to action that suggests that they do that. Reads and time spent, of course, are slightly spacious without context, so it's worth establishing some benchmarks for what good looks like beforehand. What you see here is a snapshot from a performance report we created for a Business Because client. Average sponsored article reads on Business Because are around the 1,000 mark. The image, so as you can see here, the article views are particularly strong on this particular example, and there's a decent amount of time spent on that page too, suggesting that those page views are converting into actual engagement. We're also now tracking scroll depth to understand how much of an article is being read by how many people. And these are all useful ways of tracking and monitoring the effectiveness and what's resonating with the audience. Tracking codes or some sort of attribution modeling to follow readers after they've read can be effective depending on your distribution strategy, and though there are changes coming to the way that third-party cookies can be used, which is going to make it slightly more difficult. It is still a valuable tool for you now. We're Business Because and at GMAC Media looking at how we can best utilize our first-party cookies to allow us to follow our candidates across platforms, from Business Because through MBA Tour and MBA.com, all the way through to the GMAT test-taking, registration and score sending elements, so that we can measure everyone all the way through that journey. I think the final point on this is, whatever you learn, you've got to loop that back into your next activity in order to inform your future approach, because it will change and influence the way that you are creating a content plan, thinking about the distribution and what distribution channels might be most appropriate for different sorts of content. So content marketing needs to be an always-on strategy. So it needs nurture and it needs evolution.
Yeah, and just as a last word on this, when you have created your content marketing campaign, take a step back and ask yourself whether you've taken these 5 steps we've spoken about. And ask yourself, does this plan deliver on our goals? Will it make us stand out in the crowded market? Does it deliver against our audience's need? Ultimately, the power of content marketing is how it can define your brand and get your brand into the minds of prospective students. So the rewards for this, as we've seen, may be longer term, but especially in the current climate, when you're dealing with the effects of coronavirus on applications and the perception candidates have of your school, we certainly think content marketing is essential when it comes to promoting yourself and keeping your brand top of mind. And I know there are some questions.
Yes.
So I can go straight onto those questions if you like, Andy.
Yeah, let's do that.
Brilliant. So thank you all for your questions and for listening to us then. Again, if you have any questions on any aspect of content marketing, anything you'd like to hear from us, just use the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen and we will answer them. So just to go through them, there's a question from Taiguara, sorry if I've mispronounced that, and it's just asking about using university research and publications and how to promote them, maybe on social media, examples of how to do that. And I guess I can speak to that just from a wider perspective rather than specific examples. I mean, one example that we've seen, which is a good way of condensing research into something that can be easily consumed by an audience, is the CKGSB example from the Chinese school. So it's very relevant to a wider audience. It's about Chinese economic outlook. Everyone's very interested in that. And it's specifically based on a professor from the school's research that they've done through alumni from the school. So it's showing so many positive things about the school, and sharing that on social media is a way, and based on the participants of that research, is going to get lots of different people engaged with the content. So you can think about how you're putting the research together, but I understand that lots of research goes on at university and you might have some great piece of research content and it's just about getting it out there. So just practically, it's all about who your audience is again. If you're using this research to promote yourself to prospective students, think about what's actually relevant to them. So might it be research on careers, and how can you condense this quite dense academic information into something that they can easily look at on social media. So it might be a quick infographic or a very quick 30-second video highlighting some of the key themes with a link back to the longer form article. It's very important to not write in academic language. Don't just put a PDF of the research up there. Have a more accessible article that then links to the research. So that's just a couple of sort of overview ways you can go about that. I mean, certainly what we do is get opinion pieces from the professor, interview with them, maybe listicle type content. So 5 things you didn't know about whatever the research is about, careers. And again, images, videos, infographics are going to help. Thank you. That was a question from Brazil. So thanks for that. Andy, I don't know if you had something to add.
Not really. I was just going to say, yeah, I think if you're talking specifically about how you post it on social media, I'm a great supporter of the Simon Sinek approach of starting with why. Why is your audience going to be interested in this particular academic research paper? What are the extracts from it that are going to resonate with them? And then think about what people are doing, what sort of mood or mode they're in when they're on that particular social platform. People generally are on Facebook are in sort of lean back mode, and sort of scanning through and skimming through bits and pieces. So they're not necessarily researching and looking for detail in the way that they might be if they are looking through on LinkedIn. So you might want to do a different extract or a different positioning of it. So yeah, that's the only thing that I would add from that perspective.
Yeah, and there's a very relevant question that's just come in that
Yes.
we'll answer straight away from Ornella Agostino about replicating the same content in different social media channels. Yes, by all means, you can use the same bit of content and spread it across channels, but just think about, is that content relevant for the audience on each channel? And if you think it is, maybe it's the post that you want to slightly alter for each channel. So your tone, your audience you're trying to communicate with may be very different on LinkedIn, for example, compared to Instagram. So how you frame and present that piece of content will be different. I definitely recommend looking into who your audience is on these channels and tailoring your content on each channel and having an a sort of ruling brand voice for each of those channels. What is your voice and tone on Twitter? What is your voice and tone on Facebook? It may be similar, but you need to think about all of that rather than just spreading content out across all the channels in order to get the best results, I'd say.
I can see a question here that I think is probably good for you, Marco. Any good advice on how to do good keyword research?
Yes, hopefully good advice. So I think the key thing is to think about what your website is about, what your strengths are, and then go from there in terms of identifying the key terms that you might perform well for. So already what you can do to start with is assess your website, go on Google Analytics, for example, and using Google Analytics, you can find out which pages on your website are getting the most traffic through search. And so you can start to identify what keywords might be performing well for you. You can't get those exact answers, but you can start to estimate. And from there, you can see, okay, we're getting a lot of traffic on this article about, let's say, GMAT guide or something like that. So let's start doing some content targeting words around the GMAT. So the GMAT keyword is going to be a very competitive keyword. So when targeting different keywords, you want to assess how realistic is it that I'm going to be able to perform high in the search rankings for this keyword, and what might other alternatives be good to target. So GMAT might be the holy grail, but then there might be longer tail keywords that you might stand a better chance of succeeding for. So it might be average GMAT score or GMAT test prep tips. And so you might write articles targeting these keywords, and then the more content you create around this will help your overall ranking for them. In terms of how you find out what keywords to target, as I said, look on the Google Analytics and look at where your site's performing well already, and then different opportunities. From there, in terms of how to target them, it's all about what we spoke about before. So where the keywords appear in the content, but SEO has moved to much more than keywords, to be honest. And there's a lot about the quality of the content you're writing, the links back to your site. So go and try and get links back to build your domain authority. And multimedia content will help. Technical things are key though. So mobile optimization, Google reads the mobile version of your site first. So make sure the mobile version is what you're most focused on. And site speed is key. Google has a site speed tracker. You can put your URL into it, tells you how quickly your site is, and you can make adjustments. It even tells you what to do to change it. These are technical things, I'm aware, but they are key. They all work together. And again, there are tools you can use, and strongly recommend using those tools to help your SEO. So Moz is one of them, SEMrush. There's a lot of different tools out there. Have a look what can help, but definitely have an idea of how to approach it. Going from there. Unless you have anything to add on that, Andy, I have quite a nice one. Do you dare to predict in which direction content marketing will go after COVID? Andy, do you dare?
Never afraid to turn down a dare, Marco. It is obviously a very easy opportunity for me to get myself in a load of trouble here because this is being recorded. So it's going to come back and bite me. I think what we're seeing at the moment is a shift. So during the COVID crisis, I think you're seeing a shift in the way that that communications are being structured. What tends to happen during any sort of crisis is that everything gets slightly more confusing, it's slightly more frightening for everybody, and that results in either more speculation or more obfuscation, and what people want is useful information and not rumor and hyperbole and those sorts of things. So I think there is a shift in the tone of content marketing away perhaps from inspiration at the moment and more sort of think of what the world could be type pieces to more useful, practical, information-driven articles. So we've pivoted some of our content strategies for clients so that they focus more on talking about the virtues of online learning and how you can transfer those, what you might learn from that into a virtual management experience and environment. So it's about how you shift the tone to make it more practical, more useful, and I think we'll see a little bit of that. I think probably if we're talking about a post-COVID experience, whenever that may be, I think you'll probably see that pendulum swing back quite significantly the other way, because everyone's going to suddenly want to get back to, if we have a period where everything seems to be getting back to a new normal, as opposed to the normal that we've got now, which is different to the old normal. So 3 versions of normal there. But if we get to a new normal where everyone's back to work, back to study, then I think we will hopefully have a reaction to that sort of information hungry world to being a slightly more people looking for more inspiration coming out of slightly tougher times. We've seen before that content marketing activity and investment in content marketing tends to increase at times of recession. Interesting, it's counter-cyclical in the same way that graduate management education tends to grow in times of recession. Content marketing tends to do the same thing because people are looking for more longer term strategies in engaging their audience. So I think we will see a shift towards that. I think when we finally emerge out the other side of the current situation, blinking into the sunlight, then hopefully we'll all be looking for a little bit more positivity and some more inspiring stories. So that's, yeah, my best guess at it. Feel free to come back to me in the months that come to say this hasn't happened at all. Marco, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, just to add to that, I think the worst thing you can do during the current situation is to stop your marketing activities. You know, it's so important to stay present. This is such an important time for business schools and any brand to become thought of positively by their audience. We've seen many brands fail in doing that in different countries, but it's also a point in time where someone can reflect on and think, yeah, I remembered that brand, that stayed with me in this time. So keeping your brand top of mind is important. We've had a lot of schools do content around how they've engaged with the local community in this time. So really showing what their involvement in the crisis is in a positive way. And as Andy said, there's more content around useful content. How can you apply to business school during this period? How are we helping you study online? So the messaging changes slightly. Definitely the type of content you're sharing, the audience's priorities are definitely changing. You have to think about all of these things, but don't stop your marketing in this situation. Just to come back to a question from Ornella again on social media, talking about, is it best to post content on the different channels in the same day, on the same time? We use a tool called Meltwater to post social media, and for each channel it tells you the optimum times based on what's performed well in the past for you, when to share content. So definitely different channels will have different peaks and troughs in terms of when people are using them, when your audience is using them. So it would be best, I know it's a bit more labor intensive, but it would be best, and if you have a tool like Meltwater or other tools out there, it's best to schedule posts for when they can best reach your audience. And again, depending on what that post is, what that kind of content is important. On this presentation, we shared some slides, a little posting checklist for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and that gives you a little more information on that. So do refer to that. And it also talks about how many times in a day you should post, and it's really important to not share too much. So really limit it to 3-4 posts a day max on Facebook, and put your efforts behind those posts rather than just posting throughout the day. So do check those out as well. Andy, interesting question here from Marianne. Just talking about, in the UK, there's a publication called Conversation, which aims to explain research projects to a more general readership. Do we know of any outlets that exist in Europe? So I will quite shamelessly self-promote here what Business Because are doing in this area. And it's not something, to be honest, I've noticed too much about. Obviously, Marianne, there are traditional publications, the Financial Times, the Economist, who are always, and ourselves, are always interested in expert comment. And so publishers will usually look to use comment from professors within an article rather than just sort of breaking down research and recycling it. They'll pick out bits that might work, or maybe write an article around the research. But what we're doing on Business Because, we have set up last year. Traditionally, we do a lot of content directed at the MBA and business school and master's candidates. So all our content is really focused on prospective business school students. And that means a lot of application tips and insider guides to business schools and things like that. And a new content stream we've started up recently is called Business Because Insights. And here we are specifically trying to reach a wider audience and also trying to reach people even further up the application funnel, and maybe just starting to think about the potential of business school, but much earlier on in consideration phase. And we are talking about topics like the sharing economy, or disruption in the financial industry, of artificial intelligence and the like. And we are exclusively using insight and research from business school professors for this series. So the USP of these articles is that all the information from them is supplied by business school professors and their thought leadership. So that's a great way of communicating your research to a more general readership. Again, and it's more into PR area, but communicating to big publications and publications across the spectrum to try and get your research in there. Personally, I'm not familiar with any publications. I'll have to look into the conversation more specifically, but publications that specifically sort of translate research into something more digestible in its purest form. Plenty of publications will do that if they're interested in your research and just tell the story. So I think it's always best to tell the story, whether that's through word or video. I don't know, Andy, if you've got anything to add on that.
No, I think that's a pretty good summary of what you can do. Yeah, the PR outreach side of things is something I'm less familiar with than Marco. PRs tend to approach the editors and editorial side. So yeah, I think some desk research on those on that sort of group, I think is incredibly can be incredibly useful to build yourself a small database of journalists and try and reach out to some of them in order to get some coverage. Would seem to be the best way of going. Marco, this one's like an open goal for you. How important is storytelling?
Yes, I mean, I know we're coming up to our time, so I won't do a whole other webinar on this question, which we could do. So, I mean, storytelling is very important, and it should really be at the heart of the content you create and content marketing. Telling a story is also very relevant to our industry, to graduate management education. Because if you think about a candidate's journey through business school, it follows the natural progression of telling a story. So you have the before business school, the during business school, and the after. Why did someone go there? What did they do when they're there? How did they benefit? Showing that story is crucial for prospective students. That's essentially all they want to know. How do I get in? What do I need? What's it going to be like? And crucially, what's the return on investment? What am I going to get out of it? I know a lot of the time schools don't want to talk so explicitly about jobs and salaries and want to talk about the long-term value of the degree. And that's absolutely fine and right to do so. But candidates are bluntly very interested in money. What are they going to earn after it? Of course, there's a shift towards people more and more interested in social impact and entrepreneurship and all the different things you can do with a business school degree. But salaries are still important, and crucially, just the value of the degree is important. And storytelling lets you show that. So telling the story of an alum who's gone to business school is a very good way of showing to a prospective student what they can achieve, of inspiring them and informing them about the school, and crucially of promoting your school in a subtle but effective way. So you can communicate your key goals for the content campaign, you can communicate them and frame them for the target audience you want to promote. You can SEO optimize your piece of content, go through all those steps we've spoken about, and you can do that all through the storytelling technique. And that's a core part of what we do at Business Because, is that storytelling angle. So storytelling is very important and really needs to be at the core of your content marketing activities and policies, and essentially your brand. A brand needs a strong story behind it to really resonate with people.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marco. We are coming up to the top of the hour, so we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So thanks to everybody for joining today, and again, thanks to the guys at CEEMAN for inviting us. There'll be a recording of this webinar to look out for, so please keep an eye on that. If you're interested in speaking with Marco or I, then please reach out to the guys at CEEMAN or to the email addresses that you can see on your screen now. And don't forget, please, that there is another poll coming up. It's really useful for us to get any feedback on what you've heard and seen today, in order that we can make sure that we are giving you what you want and giving you what you need in the future. So yeah, please take a moment to fill that in. Other than that, Olga, I'm not sure if you have any last words, but if not, then we'll say goodbye. Thank you.
Andy, Marco, thank you so much. You know, while you were presenting very useful material, you know, I just had a chance also to browse a little bit through the participants list, and, you know, just to let you know, we have more than 20 countries represented. You know, we saw Brazil and UK and Romania, Albania, Georgia, Central Asia. So once again, thank you everyone for joining, for listening, for very interesting questions, and of course, for very useful content.
That's very kind. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks, CEEMAN, for the opportunity as well.
Thank you.